thank you very much for joining us here on PM Express. Tonight we are having the big budget debate. The budget has just been read. I want to quickly go through some of the highlights for you, and then my guests will sit down. There's a lot to get through, so we don't want to waste time on this. Let's get through for you. For those of you who this is your first time of engaging with this particular topic, because you've been at work, you just got home, you're wondering, what did the finance minister say? He said a lot. So let me quickly break it down for you before we get into the specifics of this. First of all, one of the key things we want you to know is that as far as the government is concerned, total revenue for next year, they expect it to be 100.5 billion cedis. Also, total expenditure, how much they plan to spend next year, they expect it to be 137.5 billion. So quickly, you see that there is a gap there that needs to be bridged. We're going to go into what the finance minister is suggesting will be done to bridge this gap very shortly. One of the first things the finance minister had said today that you need to know is that there's going to be a new levy, a new tax. This is what is called the electronic transactions tax, the E-levy. And the E-levy, it's, of course, the finance minister explained, expected to widen the tax net and rope in an informal sector. What is it exactly? It is a 1.75%, which will be borne by you, the sender, if you send money. Many are calling it Momo tax, the digital tax, etc. But they has a specific name. The E-levy is what the finance minister called it in the budget. It's going to be on a few things. Inward remittances to be paid by the recipient, that is yourself, and then of course if you send it, you bear the cost as a sender. But it's going to be on a few things: mobile money payments, that's one; bank transactions, two; merchant payments, and inward remittances. So let me break this down a bit. So if you are sending mobile money to anybody, if it's above 100 cedis, you're going to pay this amount, 1.75 on that. And this, by the way, is in addition to the charges that are already on it. So let's take the minimum amount, say 102, but let's say 200 cedis. If you're transferring 200 cedis, you are going to pay 3 cedi, 50 pesos, because of the 1.75 cedi that has now been added. This is in addition to the 2 cedi that you would normally pay, because every 100 cedi comes with a 1 cedi charge. So in effect, if you are transferring mobile money of 100 cedis, you are paying 5 cedi, 50 pesos as a result of this, when this is finally passed by Parliament. And so this is the exception here, as the finance minister explained. Transactions that add up to 100 cedis or less per day, which is approximately 3,000 per month, are tax exempt. So for that, you won't pay any tax. So that's a big one. That's the first big one that you note. It's going to be on anything, electronic transactions. So if you go to the bank and you make a bank transfer, you expect to pay POS, you expect to pay. In fact, if it's you're withdrawing money from the ATM, unless we wait for the GRA to come and tell us there are some more exemptions. That is what, on the face of it, that's what it looks like. Let's go to usage of the levy. What would it be used for? Entrepreneurship, youth employment, cyber security, digital and road infrastructure, public transport. That's what the money is going to be used for, according to the finance minister. And you expect this to take effect next year when Parliament, after the debate, and has been approved. But there's another big one. No tolls. There are going to be no tolls, no road tolls on all public roads and bridges. And the finance minister said this will happen, but won't leave people who man these toll booths jobless. And all road, the booths will be removed as well. In fact, in the last few minutes, there's a statement that has been released. We're getting the roads ministry to confirm that, but signed by the sector minister, directing that midnight tonight, all road tolls should stop operating. I'm going to bring you the details of that statement very shortly, because it's just been issued and signed by the minister. And this is a directive that he's put forth, that the toll booth should stop 12 midnight. This is about 3 hours away. I expect the toll booths to cease. I'm going to get home around the same time. I'll see if this is something that will happen. But that's in the last few minutes. When we sit down, I'll read through that statement for you very quickly. So that is an announcement that was made today. What are the benefits of this? According to the Finance Minister, help reduce congestion on the roads, reduce traffic time, the travel time, reduce environmental pollution, increase productivity. He said it's in his budget today. Now, you remember the big conversation we had yesterday? Guta was unhappy, the suggestion that the benchmark value policy is going to be reversed. It has been reversed. In fact, the discounts have now gone. The 50% discounts are now gone, which means that if you are importing for those selected products, you're going to pay the full value for it, a full 100%. Guta have said that this is obviously going to be passed on to you to pay, which is what it is tonight. Then there is some incentives government is also giving to create more jobs targeting the youth. It's called the Youth Start, right? Which is a 1 billion CD fund. And the government is hoping they'll create 1 million jobs for you and for the young person out there. And so that's a key thing. What is the Youth Start money going to be used for? The billion every year, plus an additional 2 billion or so from private sector contribution. Soft loans for young men and women who want to be entrepreneurs. Capital loans, a standardized loan package, learning programs, enterprise endowment funds, access to markets. So this is what the finance minister hopes the money will be used for. Now, let's talk about the Bantapa program, which is one of the government's central vehicles on the back of the recovering from COVID, etc., and also putting money into the sector to grow businesses. He updates us that there've been access for agribusiness through the GSAL, financial support to SMEs by banks, also skills development to about 150,000 graduates and young entrepreneurs has happened on the back of that policy. The operational license received now. We understand for the development bank. The finance minister announced that last week Friday, the central bank gave the license for that to happen. So there's a lot to talk about, the big budget debate. We're going to go through that. Shortly, I'll share with you what the Transport Ministry, for the Roads and Highways Ministry has said on the back of that road toll announcement by the finance minister. Case Forson is the ranking on the finance committee. He's my guest. Also, the chairman. He's also, both of them are former deputy ministers. So that's the beauty of it. They've all been in the room when the budget was crafted. And they bring in their expertise to bear on PM Express. Stay with us. And thank you very much for joining us on PM Express. As I said, my guests are seated. It's the chairman of the Finance Committee, Kweku Kwarteng, who himself is a former deputy finance minister, and Kayselato Forsing, who himself is a former Dr. Kayselato Forsing, who held the former deputy finance minister and the ranking on the Finance Committee. Just before we go in, as I said earlier, we now confirm that with the transport minister, roads minister rather, and I want to quickly read for you what the minister has now caused to be issued, and he signed it himself. He says, following the presentation of the 2022 budget by the Honourable Minister of Finance on behalf of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Ghana on Wednesday, November 17, 2021, the Ministry of Roads and Highways hereby directs the cessation of the collection of road and bridge tolls at all locations nationwide. This directive takes effect from 12 a.m. Thursday, November 18th. So which means that in the next 3 hours or less, this will stop, 12 a.m. The Motor Traffic and Transport Department of the Ghana Police Service will be on hand to provide security at the toll location for the effective date. Motorists are kindly advised to approach the locations with caution and observe all safety measures that will be put in place. The motoring public will be advised of further measures in due course. This is pretty historic, I must say. For the first time in our history, we'll stop seeing toll booths operating. So that's a directive there on the back of today. This is very swift. Your reaction to this development?
I think the minister announced that effective today.
Okay.
So I'm not surprised that they implemented it. But it's something to cover what we are going to pay.
Okay.
And so they are giving something back. Well, the revenue loss will be about 72 million. It's not that big. So I've always said that the road tolls out there should be removed because the amount of money in terms of fuel that we burn on the traffic as against the revenue the government gets, I don't think it's worthwhile. So I think it's something that I will say that it's something that all of us are expecting. It is right that they've taken the decision, and I'll commend them for that.
Okay, I'll come to the fees and charges bit that the minister announced because it's linked directly to this. Your reaction to this? So 12 a.m., 3 hours from now, toll booths will disappear across the country.
Well, that is good news, and it's very heartwarming to even hear critics of government say that this is a good initiative. I think in economic management, whilst you try to take taxes from people at one point, you also provide reliefs at certain points in order to have the optimal effect on the economy. And I also think that it's a good decision by government, and I'm happy it takes effect immediately.
Okay. However, there's a question that needs to be probed, though, a bit more, because I want to quote the budget. This is page 36 that was read today. Mr. Speaker, in addition to our public-private, in addition, this is on the sector on roads. In addition, our public-private partnerships program for the financing, construction, management of road infrastructure has 3 projects at different stages of preparation. Accra-Tema Motorway, PPP project, 31 kilometers. Accra-Cape Coast, PPP. And then they are doing feasibility studies. The question then becomes, you've abolished tolls, but you're going to have your indication that you're going to have PPP roads. There's some reconciling that needs to be done there. How is the PPP going to function in the absence of the toll booths? Because elsewhere in the world where this has happened, where PPP arrangements, you make the money back by, through the toll system. Yeah,
I mean, these are questions that all of us will be asking when the instruments for implementing these decisions are brought to Parliament. We need to remember that this is a discussion between the ranking member and the chairman for the Finance Committee of Parliament. This was announced to both of us. Government will be coming with the details. Our job is to ensure that when the details come, they reflect what has been said in the budget. So some of these we will not know the details now. And having been in the Ministry of Finance, I'm aware that policy intentions are declared in the budget, but the actual detail as to what would happen, what is exempted, what is in, what is not in, would come in the instruments they bring to Parliament to give effect to these policies. But a PPP, we probably should ask ourselves, what kind of PPP? A PPP simply means public-private partnership.
Yeah.
Now, if road tolls have been abolished, and yet we're going to do these PPPs, I think the question we ought to be asking government is that how would the private sector people recover their costs? It's a question we should be putting. I do not think it is premature to assume that, well, if there is going to be PPP, and road tolls have been abolished, then don't trust government. Road tolls will not be abolished. I am confident that tomorrow this will take effect. So the question then would be to find out what the details for these PPP arrangements will be.
I mean,
Evans,
Doc,
as for this government, anytime they say one thing, look your back, because something may be waiting. You can see the contradiction out there. PPP is public-private partnership. All over the world, PPP projects on roads, there's toll. All over the world. I want him to tell me one project anywhere in the world where PPP project government ends up using.
I'll tell you. Look,
give me one example apart from road tolls. So they use the road tolls. But let me make a point.
Sorry.
My point is that these road tolls today may be off, but don't be surprised that when that PPP starts, the road tolls may be back. So don't be surprised.
So there are 2 specific roads. So Accra, Tema, Accra, Cape. What you're suggesting is that if this happens, you won't be surprised if they build fresh
exactly.
tolls.
Exactly. Because look, the private man will need a way, or will have to show to their bankers how they are going to repay. And if government's intention is to give it to a private man to plow that road and spend on that road, build that road and get the revenue back, government should tell us what makes it PPP.
Yeah, I mean,
because clearly,
but
there's a problem out there.
So that's what I wanted to explain. For instance, it is not inconceivable that government says you do this road as a PPP by pre-financing the construction. The way you get paid is that for every 1 CD collected on this e-transact levy, a portion comes to you, the road, the private player. Okay. That's why I say let's just wait.
How?
For me, why not?
In fact, because when you are paying for it, you are paying for it. So you can as well collect a loan, plow, and then use the tax money that you are given to.
Yeah,
and then construct the road.
They don't need a private partner.
You don't need a private partner.
Because government is already collecting the money. Then why don't you just build
There's an important difference. The important difference is that if you take a loan today, it hits your public debt directly. And your investors are looking.
So you want to hide the public?
If you tell, well, you're not hiding, you're telling the public that, look, you can pre-finance this road. We are committing future revenues along this line to you. It is for the investor looking to examine our books and to see our public debt profile to make a determination whether that is transparent enough. The simple point I'm making is, let's not be in a hurry to attribute some cunning motives where there is none. We need to trust ourselves as a people.
Where there appears to be a contradiction, it raises questions.
Look, it is even possible that maybe if this was conceived with the view to paying with
the E-levy,
with the road tolls, then now that the road tolls are off, this PPP may not even happen.
No. That would be very strange, because if you look at the chronology of the budget, the way it was read, the announcement of the scrapping of the tolls happened, and then later the finance minister on roads and says we are doing PPP. I mean, I don't think they'll miss that.
All right.
In all the days they spent to plan this, that they'll miss the contradiction.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, I concede.
For me, let's be honest. The revenue generation or the revenue loss is about 72 million Ghana cedis. Yeah. What it means is that government collects revenue up to 72 million Ghana cedis for road tolls. He's giving it in the form of relief. But let's ask ourselves, what additional taxes he's collecting from us? In the same budget, he's collecting $25 billion.
So that's
Ghana cedis. The E-levy and others. The E-levy alone, I call it digital tax. E-levy alone is bringing in 7 billion Ghana cedis.
We talk about that so now because I was going to go there next. So let's
what is important. I don't want to be wasting my time on the 72 million.
Let's go to the E-levy.
You give me 72 million and then you take 25 billion.
I mean, let's go to the E-levy, because tonight, after I spoke to you, we spoke to the Bankers Association, and they are worried that this is possibly going to reverse the gains they've made in the cashless, trying to promote cashless. Something that you champion and he championed also, both of you. They are worried about that. They're also worried that it will hit. In fact, they say banks are not going to pay anything because this is sender paying receiver. And they're worried about its impact on customers and the pressure that will be put on them with queues coming to the banks, because people will probably drawing more fiscal cash and making payments. Dr. Tuforsing, so that is the Bankers Association already hinting that this may be an issue. What's your own reading of this big announcement today?
As for me, I have a big problem with this e-transaction levy. That's how they call it. Remember, they gave us 3 components of this e-transaction levy, the digital tax. Number 1 is Momo tax. Number 2 is the remittance. Number 3 is the bank transfer levy. So you have 3 items under one single tax item. The revenue yield, we were told, is going to be 6.9 billion Ghana cedis. This is big revenue yield.
Annually?
Annually, according to the budget statement. My worry is that let me take them one by one and analyze them. The first one, let me talk about the bank transfer. The bank transfer one for me is unconscionable. It's unacceptable. In fact, it will be inimical to the growth of the banking sector. All over the world, the motive is to encourage people to do online activities or do transaction outside cash, and to ensure that the cashless economy becomes a reality. The challenge we face as a country is for us to migrate from a cash economy to a cashless economy. This single tax measure is going to derail it. And I tell you why. You are telling me that if I have a company that I do a lot of transaction in a day or within a year, let's say my average company does a transaction of, let's say, 50 million Ghana cedis, I'm going to pay 1.75% of those transactions. Transfers. On my way coming here, I spoke to an importer. He said to me, Ato, I trade equivalent of 50 million US dollars a year. Most of them are done through transfers. Is this government telling me that on top of the taxes and other import duties I'm going to pay, I'm going to also pay 1.75% of these transactions?
Yes.
But he ends up telling me that I'm not Father Christmas, I'm going to pass it on.
Okay.
I'm going to pass it on. And do you think it's something that is going to just happen and then the ordinary Ghanaian is not going to feel the impact? Businesses are going to see inefficiencies. Unfortunately, if care is not taken, average man on the street, the ordinary Ghanaian, the ordinary businessman, will stop using bank transfers. They will start using cash. So the era where people carry big amounts of money in their car boot, keep them in their houses, is coming back. It's coming back because of this policy. I am saddened. In fact, I am worried that the financial sector, that all of us want it to grow, this government seeks to reverse all the gains that we have made. Apart from that, the government has not come out to tell us that if I'm a company and this company I am paying wages, I transfer wages to my client, that wages is going to be exempted. In fact, it is if you use the banking system, you are going to be taxed. In fact, if you are to do any transfer, assuming you are traveling, you want to buy a ticket. In fact, if you use your what do you call it, your ATM card, for any online transaction, Netflix, anything, you are going to be charged. Any online transaction. I urge the government to come again on this one. Because as for us, we have made our case clear that we do not believe this is going to support the growth of the banking sector. We have said that we do not accept this because it is not going to help the banking sector. Forget about that. Let's move on to the next item. The next item on the same e-transaction levy has to do with remittances. This government, Kweku's government, is telling us, Kweku, can you look at the faces of your constituent to tell them that the old lady in the village whose son or daughter is living abroad, sending that person some small money for medical expenses, sending money for school fees, you are saying you are going to tax and take 1.75% of that mega money. What insensitivity is this? How can you be that wicked?
And just to clarify, when it has to remittance, it will be borne by the recipient.
It doesn't, yes, the recipient. So the person that is receiving the money will lose something, 1.75% of
all
that
the
money.
other transfers, tender pays.
Please. It is not that easy. So the recipient, and in the end, if I'm sitting out there, I've done probably 3 jobs. In fact, I call this diaspora tax. Because the person living abroad has sent money in, and he wants this money to be used probably to build a home for him. He has worked all his life and sending these remittances home. Unfortunately, he's going to meet taxation. His little savings will be taxed. This is equivalent to taxes on savings. This is equivalent to taxes on savings. We should not accept this. And to conclude on this remittance tax, I'm sorry to say that if care is not taken, underhandling, black marketing will boom in this economy. Because people will go underground. The remittances that comes through the banking system, that helps us shore our reserves, if care is not taken, will go underground. Is that what we want? Is that what we want as a country? Please. We cannot allow these things to happen. And then above all, you want to tax mobile money transactions. You are not telling us even the fees that you are going to charge 1.75% on the quantum of money that you are sending. Oh my God. So if I sit here and a constituent of mine calls me and tells me that, Ato, please send me money for my school fees. That little money you are going to tax, that 1,000 Ghana cedis that I sent to my
But
constituency,
you should pay. You can afford.
Then I won't send it any longer. I will say, wait for me. When I get to the constituency, I'll give it to you. That is what is going to happen. You are collapsing the Momo industry. In fact, what surprises me is that the whole value chain is sharing 1%. The whole value chain, their commission they get is 1%. The telco owner, the merchant owner, the entire value chain is sharing 1%. Greedy NPP government is taking 1.75%, even more than the entire value chain. Okay. What is this?
Well, there's a lot to probe there, but I want to hear Mr. Kwarteng's quick reaction to this before we probe a bit of the things that we've heard.
Okay. Already. Well, first and foremost, I think Honorable Atuforsen raises quite some legitimate concerns, and I guess there will be concerns that many who have heard about this policy intention of government will have. And it is okay that we discuss them. But when I listen to him, his prayer that this policy leads to things going underground and all that happening
can be a prayer.
Will not happen. It is not. I don't think it is right that because you are in opposition, you hope that these government policies would have the worst consequences possible. It's a prayer that you should not say Honorable Atuforsen. What I think we should wait first and foremost for, because I myself have thought about the policy, and I'm imagining if we apply it, it is applied on the way it appears on the face of it, that every transfer, that salaries, it is really going to be huge. It's really going to be huge. I will wait and see the legislation that the Ministry of Finance would bring to activate this policy. And in any event, Parliament has the power to, for instance, create even exemptions where we think those exemptions are necessary. So what I say to...
You think there's a need for an exemption? For exemptions?
The policy was read today. We need to take our time and think through this. But there could be the need for exemptions. Salaries for... Already, we heard that the first 100 cedis, even if you were transferring 200, the first 100 cedis, the way we had the text, is exempted. Now, what further...
No, that's not how it is.
That's how I understood it.
No, but no, I didn't read it. So all transactions that add up to 100 or less per day, which is approximately 3,000 per month, will be exempt from this. So once you go beyond it, you pay.
Yeah, but that's why you see. That's why
it's not like
you see, that's why I keep saying, let us wait for the legislation that will activate this. Yeah. All these would be clear. But if you ask me whether there ought to be exemptions, I do not have a ready answer today. But I guess if the government is attentive enough to consider exempting the first 100, it may well be that salaries of, for instance, workers who are not even allowed to pay a PAYE at all, because as you would see in the budget, efforts also has been made in that direction. All those workers may be exempted. It won't surprise me. That's why I say, let us.
So that's an expectation you have.
It is. Yes, it is. I would.
You expect that?
I would doubt. I would very much.
And we should be exempt.
You know, I am making the point that in order to analyze this properly, the understanding we're getting on the face of it is that every transfer will be taxed.
Yeah. Once it's electronic.
I'm saying that it does not appear practicable, and that we should wait for the legislation to see exactly how this will be implemented in practice. Okay. That's all I'm saying. I don't know what we gain by hoping, and when I say this, my friend doesn't like it, but by hoping that government makes it as ruthless as possible, and the prayer of Honorable Atuforsen happens, that it drives things underground, and we are back 25 years and all that. I do not think that should be the attitude of a patriotic Ghanaian to a government policy like this. Our job as the legislature is to even look at this, and where government does not want to create the exemptions, if Honorable Atuforsen's concerns are that there are specific areas where we will have to exempt. I would like him to express those when we look, and unfortunately we'll come to the finance committee. So we have the opportunity to present to the bigger plenary that we think these exemptions must come. And it doesn't matter that it's from my government. If I genuinely believe that Honorable Atuforsen is making the case for certain things to be exempted and they are legitimate, why will I not support it? That's why I say his attitude is wrong. But before we go, you know, when I listen to him and he says, a wicked government, insensitive, no, we've done enough of this kind of politics. That's why we're here. Ghana, that's why we're here. Let me show you some statistics. Look, as a country, when we lend money, when we borrow money, we pay interest on it. Every year, they tell us how much of the revenues we are collecting, we're using to pay interest. I'm trying to address the fiscal problem we have on our hands as a country. Quickly, I'll do that quickly. In 2006, we used 15.6% of the revenue we collected to pay interest. And then in 2007, because of HIPIC, it came down. In 2008, right under President Kufuor and NPP administration, it started going up again. It tells you that we were now beginning to get into our old culture of borrowing. By the time the NDC administration came, it was 14.14. By the time the NDC administration was exiting in 2016, it has jumped from 14.14 to 33.1%. This is Ghana, all right? We see what we saw immediately after HIPIC. As a country, we started getting back to our borrowing ways. In the last 5 years, this 33.1 that we inherited from the NDC administration has increased to 45.64. What it means is that when we collect our revenue, 45.6% of it is used to pay interest. What does this tell us? It tells us that as a country, all these years, decades, there is something we've been doing wrong. And that thing wrong is what some is playing out this evening. Insensitive government. Then we keep doing things that eventually lands us in a situation where very soon all our revenue will be used to pay interest. If the solutions were easy, we would not be moving from 14% by the time they were assuming office to using 33%. You know, the reason I tell you the deterioration of the economy in these areas under both the NPP and NDC administration is that we have played the politics and you're insensitive and we are the saviors for too long. And for me, the revenue measures in this budget are not enough. If you look at the fact that from 2020, we incurred considerable fiscal deficit. Revenues did not come, additional expenditures came with COVID. And then Honorable Atuforsen knows that over the period, in the medium term, we have defined a fiscal deficit path. That unless we want our CD to drop beyond control, every year we will close it a little bit. Every year we will close it a little bit. I am looking at this budget, and I'm seeing that in spite of all the revenue measures that Honorable Atuforsen is calling insensitive and all that, it is still very tight. So and my own view is that even the revenue measures in this budget are not enough.
So we want more?
I wish there was more. Because look, ultimately...
More what?
There's more revenue. And
more taxes?
Well, it depends on what approach government uses. I have read in the budget, for instance, that the exemptions bill is coming. I can't wait to treat that bill in the finance committee, where all those who have been fighting for exemptions, that has become a culture, would now, hopefully, we will be able to stop those. Everybody, if you want to do business here, you must pay your taxes. I see those measures. I think Parliament should support government in that area. 2, I also see measures about more intensified compliance measures. I hope that we have said that, and under President Mama, under this administration, we keep saying that we will intensify compliance, The evidence on revenue throughout in the last 2 decades would tell you that we are just not collecting revenue enough. And we don't have the option as politicians And that is why increasingly we are seeing the waning confidence in the political class. And here it's not NPP NDC matter. Look, if we don't tackle these issues head on, look at how the fundamentals, irrespective of which party is in power, are deteriorating, and keep playing this politics about insensitive and this without telling us why in the 8 years that we saw this escalation in interest payment, we never had a solution. So what I'm saying,
before we move to Atul, you said right now that you've seen the revenue measures tightening, etc. You still say it's not enough. I mean, so what other room is there to raise more, if not through taxes?
There's also the sensitivity to what the public would accept, because you must carry your people along, especially when you have people telling them that it is not that the fiscal is tight, but that the government is insensitive. You must find a way of carrying people along. So immediately, taxes may not be the option. But unless government, either through dealing with the exemptions, because the exemptions development in our economy is growing, and unless government really does something different from what we have done in the past in respect of compliance, trust me, in spite of these measures, the fiscal will still be tight.
Okay, let me ask him that. The fiscal, I mean, isn't it the reality that we need these measures to bridge that gap? Other than that, we're going to go off a cliff.
First, let me make a point. Kweku has made a point and he said patriotism and all of that. But let him be aware that patriotism is when you see the country is going the wrong way and you talk about it. Patriotism is when government impose a wrong measure and you have the gut to be able to tell the government in the face that you are wrong. That is patriotism, and that is what I seek to do today. I will not wait for these taxes to introduce inefficiencies in the Ghanaian economy, create deadweight costs, businesses to suffer, bring pain and suffering to the ordinary Ghanaian before I start talking about it.
So
no, that is my job.
So what are the alternatives?
My job, I'll come there. My job is for me as an MP, as a ranking member of the Finance Committee of Ghana's Parliament, which you chair, to be able to look at your face, even though you are my friend, to tell you that, Kweku, this policy will not help the ordinary Ghanaian. And that is what I seek to do, without fear or favor. And that is important. That is very important. So yesterday, not long ago in 2016, I heard you talk about insensitivity. I tell you the reason why, yes, in 2016, it was your words. The vice president keeps telling us that this is insensitive.
You concede.
Insensitive. What has changed today?
You concede.
I wholeheartedly concede that in the past, the politics that Atul is doing, both sides of the political divide, we have done it extensively. I am saying.
You know what I'm going to do? When or if he goes into opposition, I will wait to see what he says.
But Henry, let me close on this point.
It
is his.
But you see, the key reason, the reason why I'm talking about insensitivity is for a simple reason. Believe me, COVID has distorted the micro sector, not the macro, the micro. Small businesses. Ordinary Ghanaian is suffering as a result of COVID. Do you know the impact of the lockdown in the ordinary communities? It has actually drawn a lot of ordinary Ghanaians to the poverty line.
But Dr. Fossen, to the reality now.
And I'm saying...
You know that the gap between expenditure and revenue has been widening. In fact, it's the largest over the last 1 year. I'll come to that. And the deficit, again, needs to be checked. We need revenue measures.
You see?
If not this, what is the alternative? What is the alternative out of this?
First of all, I'll give you one major alternative. He's the chairman of the Finance Committee. I'm the ranking. We sit in Parliament almost every week. We approve or we consider a tax exemption to multinational corporations.
He agrees with you on that. I think he's...
To multinational corporations, to big companies. I think it's wrong. Let us drop that first. That's the low-hanging fruit. We can take 6-7 billion from there instead of imposing taxes that will bring hardship to the ordinary Ghanaian. Why should ordinary Ghanaians suffer and the multinational corporations make millions in profit? Is that not insensitivity? Is this a policy that we should encourage? Yet this government failed to assure us.
Simple question.
And then look, let me land. Let me land.
Let's make this a friendly discussion. Simple question. This insensitivity, okay, because I have the exemption figures here as well, historically.
Yes.
This insensitivity about allowing multinationals.
Yes.
Over what period do you consider it has existed?
You see, let me make a point. And it's important that we make this point.
Yes.
You have come to say that you are taking monies from momos. We did never said we are taking monies from momos.
But you also did a list
let me
of
come.
taxes,
Let me come. But look, MPP has done 17 taxes. And I can list you the taxes they've done when they came to office.
But you also did say, Mato.
Oh, no,
eventually, towards the end, you actually rolled them back.
So that is why they should allow me to flow and make my point. I'm making a point. And that point is critical. I'm saying that the micro sector is suffering.
Yeah.
Poverty has increased. Unemployment is on the rise. Remittances are supporting households. You are taxing that remittances. Is it right? Businesses are going down.
You've said that already.
So why can't I say it?
You've said that already. How many times are you going to say that?
All of these things are concerned because you don't like it. So I'm saying that the first thing to do is to take the exemptions out instead of imposing additional hardships on the ordinary Ghanaian. That's the first thing. And you come back to tell us that that is not enough, so you want to do more. First, you tell us why we are where we are. And if it is your fault, apologize to the people of Ghana. Assure them that it will not happen again. Assure them that you are going to do things differently. Tell them that going forward, this is what you are going to do, so they should accept it. It is not when they are accepting it and paying more taxes and you misuse those taxes. No. No. They won't pay. So you have failed to do all of this and you are telling them to pay. What are they going to pay?
Let me agree with you here. You know, the good point Honorable Ato is making about not just focusing on the taxes, but looking at not just other ways of raising revenue, such as the exemption. You know, the question I put to him about the history there, I was just trying to let him understand that this language about you're doing this because you're insensitive, the records don't bear that out. And it is the reason I repeat this. The public out there begin to see politicians in a certain way. We have had enough of the politics. We can move on now. So I'm only inviting.
So it's your time, so we shouldn't talk.
Look, I'm coming.
When you make that point, some people, it comes across as you may be self-serving.
It is.
Because you are in government, so when they do, they are playing politics. But that's the reality of what both sides have done.
Yes. And at whatever time we, the politicians, come to the common conclusion that this kind of politics is not helping, one will be in opposition and one will be in government. So for me, it's not a matter. Let's wait and go into opposition. My language would not change. Look, I've been in politics enough. It is just to come into politics and you produce these outcomes and I leave politics. What is my joy? So what I'm saying is this. Not only should we even look at other revenue measures that will, in my opinion, bring greater stability to the fiscal. We should also look at expenditures. And I have already said that in looking at the expenditures, charity should begin at home.
Where?
We, the political class, we must put our, there has been a lot of discussions about Article 71 office holders, our remuneration and all that. I hope that as we move, we can have the political consensus that in reality, it doesn't come to much because we are not that many. But sometimes it is good to do that in order to signal to the population that we, the leadership, we ourselves have started. And then we can begin to look at all those people, for instance, in the government payroll who go to work and do little.
Okay, so specifically for the political class, what are you suggesting that they do?
I think Article 71 office holders remuneration, for instance, the current arrangement when the executive determines that of the
legislature.
And you guys have called it scratch my back, there's nothing wrong with creating a body under the Fair Wages and Salaries Act.
Countries have that independent emolument.
Exactly, whatever you want to call it. And let them determine, with the same spirit that they determine public sector wages, let them determine that of the leadership. I also think that we must cap the number of members of parliament, for instance. The number of parliament that in the past, the NDC administration comes, they create districts, Electoral Commission operates on some principle that one constituency cannot contain 2 districts, and we keep creating the constituencies and creating the number of MPs and the associated costs. Somehow, I would be happy that as we discuss these matters and tell the public that, look, the taxes are not, after all, you cannot tax yourself out of poverty. And that we are also going to have to make some hard choices about expenditure. Then we can have that discussion. And when we have finished, I think this culture that has now started in the public, that every community now wants asphalt. And the way we have been playing the game, it makes a lot of sense for the politician to continue providing the asphalt. And a lot of the road projects you would see are being constructed with loans. The point I'm making, and I conclude on this, is that I do not disagree on many points with Honorable Ato's suggestions that you cannot go on tax. You must cut expenditure. Most of those points are legitimate. My problem with him is that, you see, when you say it in the spirit of government being insensitive, when you have had the opportunity, you have done the same, we know the fundamental subcultures in our society that are driving these things, then I begin to doubt the sincerity of the solutions you're proposing. Then we don't make progress.
There's a quick question I'll ask you, and I'll ask you the same question, just quickly. I mean, when you say that the political class must show leadership, I wonder, in the immediate short term now, on the back of this budget, and when we know people are going to take a bit more of the bedding, in fact, the finance minister used the word bedding sharing, do you think, at least in signaling that the current political class, the executive mainly, because this is an executive budget, so to speak, empathize and know, do you think that would you recommend, as some have suggested, that currently we should see some cutting within the executive, wherever they can find
I'll be
happy
to see it. Honestly, even for members of parliament, I'll be happy to see it. I really don't mind what my colleagues MPs would think, or my colleagues in the party would think. I think that
cutting what? Salaries, etc.
Look, we can debate it. I cannot think through all the solutions right now, but whatever it is, I listen to people out there, and I hear the increasing disconnect between the government and we, political leadership. And sometimes when I hear my colleagues in opposition speak, and I say, a lot of the dissatisfaction people are expressing against political leadership, it's not just against the ruling party. It's against the political class. We have a responsibility to deal with it. So if you ask whether I'll be happy to see something immediately, I would. But more importantly, I think there must be a conscious effort, consensus on both sides of the politics, that we cannot continue along this path, because he himself knows that even with the measures we are seeing, that the fiscal is still very tight. And
let me ask you. First, you agree?
Yes.
That political class must take some cuts.
There's no doubt about it.
Okay.
It should happen. It should happen now. There's something we call signaling. You lead by example. You see, when the ordinary person on the street struggle to pay tax, either consumption tax or direct tax, or indirect tax, they're paying taxes. And then in the end, they see that government is spending this money on ostentation and creature comfort of government officials. They will get worried. You know, people get angry when they see these V8 cars. For instance, and it's a fact.
And both of us,
it's a fact.
We have V8.
We've had those discussions. When, for instance, a president is visiting a constituency, and you see government vehicles, V8, let's say 50, 60, 100, what does it tell you? All of them are taking fuel from the state. It may not be the presidency, but different sectors. It's the taxpayers' money. Recently, a number of Ghanaians traveled, and we've had that conversation, to Glasgow. Is it Glasgow?
Yes, for the
climate change. We had 330 something. What? They came back to say that only 24 people were sponsored by government. But let me tell you, whether they are coming from MPA, whether they are coming from EPA, wherever they are coming from, the reality is that it is public sector money that they use in that travel. There may be some few of them that may be that they are coming from the private sector, maybe 10%, maybe 15%. But largely, It may not be drawn on office of the government machinery budget, but their sector's budget that is actually public sector's money, public fund that was used for that travel.
I want to
so that is a fact.
I want to take a quick break.
That is a fact. And we should be concerned about that.
I want to take a quick break. When I return, we'll end on, of course, we know that the benchmark values have now gone, that they've reversed that policy. I'll pick the thoughts on it. And then there's a positive thing that we haven't spoken about. And I asked a point on this. The 1 billion cedi that is going to be made available for the youth start for youth to create jobs for them for 1 million jobs annually. Stay with me. And thank you very much for staying with us. We'll wrap up in just a couple of minutes. So I'll give 1 minute each to both gentlemen. Dr. Foster, let me start with you. There's another big one. What happens now? Yeah, time is gone. Yes.
So short. I thought you were going to extend it.
Oh no, I can't.
We'll do that another time.
Evans, my major worry with this budget is not only the digital tax, the 3 components of the digital tax. It's indeed includes the
reversal of
benchmark revenue. Evans,
in just a minute, because
I've talked about the issue of poverty and the number of people falling below the poverty line. This single tax policy, if care is not taken from tomorrow, prices of certain key commodities will start going up by at least 30%, 25 to 30%, at least.
Guta has said as much.
And let me say, because I've done the calculation, let me say this to conclude. This killer budget, in fancy, this budget is a bad budget. I am urging my colleague, Honorable Kweku Kwati, to quickly go and have a meeting with the finance minister to review these policies before they come to Parliament.
So I was going to ask you, finally, when it comes to the approval, what happens? What's the minority signaling?
Well, we will await for the details to be presented to us.
Thank you.
One thing I can assure you is that if this budget comes before us, and it is us I'm reading, we will not accept it.
As in you reject it?
We will reject it.
Okay.
But if it comes and it is telling us something different, we will evaluate that thing word for word, line by line. And if it makes sense, why not?
Yeah, this is how you should have been.
But I can assure you that as it is now, minority members of parliament have set a position. And the position that my minority leader has asked me to come and communicate to the people of Ghana is that we will not accept this Bawumia tax.
Okay.
I made somebody sent me a text that they want to see my face. Look, I made this point this afternoon that there's a budget by the government led by Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. We want to discuss.
I have 30 seconds.
You want to call it Bawumia for political reasons. It's up to you. It shows how sincere or not you are. Look, the benchmark policy. The benchmark policy is a policy that says we would make imports cheaper. Those who have been complaining are local industries who must create jobs for the teeming unemployed. Now, government has responded and did not even make it sweeping. It says, for those items that we have local manufacturers for, those ones I am removing the benchmark so that we'll be protecting our local industries to create jobs. Is this something, Honorable Atuforsin, we cannot all applaud? That we must condemn such a policy intervention too?
Which one? Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Next week we'll have a conversation about the fiscals because we indeed had prepared for it with the research, and indeed when that happens, we'll break down what the fundamental problems are that the finance was attempting to resolve with all these measures. Join us then. My name is Evans. Enjoy the rest of the evening.